Welcome to Living Chassidus. Together, let's live the Chassidus we learn.
Instructions. You hear what the person's saying, you hear what he's hearing, and what he's hearing is like blah 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 blah. He has no idea what the person's saying. So the greatest challenge became the greatest opportunity for expansion and for self-reflection, for self-awareness, and for motivation. But it wasn't easy. So I ended up becoming an ADD coach. I got my coaching certificate, help primarily women who have ADD, and that's really, I was only able to do that because of the struggle that I had, that I understood. That's why people with struggle usually are the best suited to help others who struggle, because we understand that experience. So the self-awareness that was, let's say, that was essential was just knowing, okay, I have trouble with focus. What am I doing with this? What am I doing with this child? Am I going to continue to not be able to focus? Am I going to pretend like I'm paying attention? Am I going to not raise my hand? Those are just, thank you. Those are just treating, those are called treating symptoms. You don't want to do that, because then that actually makes a cycle that often doesn't end where you want it to. So what we have right now is where we are today. Where are you today? And then maybe where you want to be, right? Say in 1 year from now, and 10 years from now, right? There's always going to be a gap. If there is not a gap between where you are and where you want to be, then that actually is an issue. It's actually good when there's a gap, because then you're striving to become better every single day. You're striving to progress into yourself, a better version of yourself. So there's different ways of doing that. I have a lot of tips. I would love to hear maybe from some of you who may want to share something that, struggle, maybe a struggle that you had that helped you discover something new. Before I go into tips, I just want to make sure that it's so far that I'm clear. I tend to ramble. I don't want to ramble too much before like that. Is this resonating at all? Is it resonating? Okay. If there's any direction that you want to go in, any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I feel like this will be more effective in a conversation. So yeah, okay. No questions? Yes.
The self-control, where like the discrepancy how we see ourselves and how other people describe us, is that like solely for women or for all? Because I don't know, I feel like it might be like more so for women. And I like recently read Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg, and she's like, it's a little intense. I don't like agree with everything in there, but she always says that like women in the workplace, they will like put themselves down a little bit or like doubt their abilities, whereas men, on the other hand, always like think they're the best and like need a promotion and all of that. So I didn't know if that like translated.
Yeah, so that's a really great question. It exists amongst pretty much all people, men, women, children. I think what you mentioned about Sheryl Sandberg is, I think she was just highlighting how with women it's more magnified because women were seen as a minority, especially in the workplace, and they were treated like kind of second-class citizens. So they kind of felt like they had to, prove something, and they had all of these unrealistic expectations and standards that they impose on themselves, right? So now we've come into an era where women are stepping up and saying, no, like we deserve more. But at the time, it's very, very difficult. They have all the standards, and standards of beauty, of intelligence, that the men just were not held to the same standards. But the confidence in men is actually the other side of the coin. because someone who, give an example, you see somebody walking into a room, right? And they act super confident, like, yeah, I've got this, I'm great at this, no one, I'm just the best maker of deals, business person you'll ever meet. That may appear as though it is the picture of confidence, but it might not be. As a matter of fact, like, I don't know if anyone heard of this, there's a book called The Narcissist Epidemic, all about that. It's about sometimes trying to like overcompensate for lack of confidence by just trying to rely on basic, which is also low self-esteem. So I don't know if, I guess it's just more of a comment than an answer, but I think that it exists amongst women probably more than men, which is probably why the Dove experiment was done with men, because women do deal with more issues related to image, and maybe men don't as much, although there are, but men do now. You don't see it as just, but it's a great question.
Actually a statistic that says that if there's 10 requirements for a job and a woman only has 9 out of the 10, she won't apply for the job. But if a man has 6 out of 10, he will apply because of this.
Yeah.
I'm not good enough. I do this. Like men are like, I think until I make it. Women are like, they're gonna find me out.
Yeah. That's like an external like validation that men get that women almost don't get. Yeah, it's a very interesting point.
I was very fascinated when I saw it.
Yeah. Hopefully that's changed.
First thing you were mentioning an example of like, let's say, cards and children, and then I just going to a conference. So what if I noticed that, hard for me, but it's hard to, I don't want to, so I, like you were saying, like that, like stuff like that. How do I help?
Yeah.
It's just, you know,
That's the ultimate key inner freedom and redemption. Really, I cannot stress how important it is to break out of it. And I have some tips that I'm going to share with you all for how to break out of that cycle. But I will say, and I did an interview with Dr. Bieber, who's the author of a book called The Choice, which I highly recommend. The one called The Choice. It's probably the top 3 books that I've read in my lifetime. And she says, and it encapsulates so well, like this idea of breaking the cycle. The opposite of depression is depression. And as long as we try to maintain this, I don't want to say facade, because really we're all doing our best. I spent many years, reason I went into the field of psychology was to understand why we, and myself as well, engage in self-sabotaging behaviors when we know that this is not helping and not working, right? We all know what we need to do. We're smart enough to know that it's probably better to not fake it, right? It's probably, well, fake it till you make it. That's a whole nother, topic that we could cover. There's some truth to that, but it has to be very, intentional. But being inauthentic and always being governed by what other people think, including people who are not our people that we care about, right? That's a recipe for depression or anxiety or just not feeling consistent about who we are and what we do. So yes, the whole point is to break out of the persona, who we think we need to be, based on the expectations of everybody else around us, right? And the expectations are different amongst different people, so that it's always constantly like, changing. There's a healthy way of doing it, but I'm talking about the way in which we do it that comes from a desire to fulfill a certain need that where the void was created from a lack of self-esteem, if that makes sense. So, there's different ways of looking at it. The way I think it's important to understand it is that the more we feel aligned, right, in what we think and how we act and who we, especially with who we want to be, right? When we act in accordance with, when we act in accordance with who we want to be, right, with a version of ourselves that we like, even if it's uncomfortable, and it will be, because there's no way of getting to that place without some discomfort. The more we do that, the better off we're. Did someone else have a question, comment? Yeah. Sorry, a little louder. Right, that was like great. That's 22. Yeah. Yeah. That's the very thing that I needed to complete the certification. Was the only thing someone's gonna have to look up. Was the only thing that getting in my way. They have a call. Yes. Yes. Yeah, I had, yeah. So, so one of the hallmarks of AD, one of the main things that people deal with is working memory, last issues with working memory. So even as I'm here now, I know that my working memory is moving capacity, and that there might be, a point where I lose my train of thought, and then, my special scattered notes, I might have to look back to them. But I like to feel organic in this process. Also hear what I'm saying, use the conversation now. But how did I complete it? It was so the great thing about it is that, and I didn't know this when I started. So signing up for this course was one of the harder things that I had to do, because that meant I was gonna for sure get exposed. My ADD was going to get exposed. I had it. When I signed up for it, I discovered that more than half the people in the course had ADD themselves. These are people who had the diagnosis, who were self-aware enough to know that they didn't want to continue in the cycle of not being truthful about who they are and what they struggle with. And they also wanted to coach themselves. Most of them were just going for their own benefit. Like, let me just figure out how to do this. Might as well just become a coach, so I'm a deeper coach. So I got through it in that way, because no matter what you're struggling, it doesn't matter what the nature of the struggle is. If you have a point of connection with other people or with somebody else, then the struggle becomes okay, and it doesn't become a crutch. It actually enables you to own it. If you don't struggle, raise your hand. If you don't have a struggle, raise your hand. I wish. But I used to say I wish, but I actually don't wish anymore, because our struggles are teachers. They're probably the best teachers that we can ever have. Anyone who's been in a relationship with someone for a long period of time, it could be a parent or a sibling or a spouse. I think a spouse is probably it more so, because they don't have a blood relation or step parent. You might notice that there are more triggers in those kinds of relationships, because things show up you can't get out of. I know this person too well. And so you might find that the areas where you get most, emotionally reactive, if you kind of dig a little deeper, there might be something in there that you can explore by yourself that can help you become a better person. It's interesting, because there are certain things about my mom that drive me nuts. She's an amazing woman, but some things about her that I'm like, yeah, mom, come on. And then I kind of take a second and I'm thinking, I kind of do this sometimes. I do that very thing and I have to call myself out on that, because otherwise I'll just keep getting annoyed. It actually helps me become less, because we kind of share those characteristics, right? So now we have that point of connection, and that's helpful. Okay. Okay.
Anybody else really confronted right now? I hang out with my mom. And, oh, you know, I have to work on it by myself.
Open my mouth. Other female.
I just like to advertise my problems to the world. Never met me before.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, whatever it could be in a relationship or like, it's funny. I used to get really like offended and hurt on, like, you know, when a flight attendant will be very hurt and firm with you. I don't know if any of you've ever experienced this, but like, man, put your seatbelt on. and I was so hurt. Like, why is she mean? I guess she had a semi. I don't know. I'm not worried about my facial. I get all of these, like, you know, narratives in my mind, like, about why. But maybe she didn't sleep well the night before. You know, maybe she had did a double shift. Like, it was interesting that, like, the triggers were less about her and more about me, right? So it just kind of helps us become more self-aware. Okay. The great thing is that, let me start here and I'll go to great. But we're very much prone to comparison. We compare ourselves. It's natural. When we're born, we're measured, right? Like, you're put on a chart. Like, you're in this percentile for weight. You're this percentile for height, for, you know, intelligence. Like, there's a spectrum. Where do you fall on that chart? So we are conditioned to feel like we're on a measuring stick, and it's always a comparison with something. So that's a big part of you know, the reason many of us kind of stay stuck, because, well, why would I do this if there's someone else better suited? I grapple with this every time someone asks me to come speak. Why are you asking me? There's this person who's probably more qualified than I am. You know, there's always this measuring yardstick that's going on inside our minds that prevents us from growing, because we'll maybe never achieve it in this area or in that area. And so it's natural, right? When we're adults, our whole lives we've been told, you know, oh, why can't you be, well, maybe not all of us, but some of us, why can't you be more like this person? Why can't you be more like that person? Which beliefs? That's always the, you know, the conversations that we have going on in our mind. Now, the only there is no comparison. That in the world that we've constructed, that's how things appear to be. But in the world that Hashem created, the only comparison that we can make is between us, not even a comparison, but it's really, it's us and God, right? If I'm comparing myself to Hashem, compare yourself. It's not a comparison. I am nothing compared to Hashem, right? And when you say I'm nothing compared to Hashem, that's called humility. That's humility. When you say I am nothing compared to this person, compared to this standard, that's low self-esteem. That's the distinction. In both cases, you're saying I am nothing, right? I'm unworthy. But in one scenario, you're saying I'm unworthy compared to this person. Therefore, who am I to do anything? I'm going to sit down. I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to do anything. That's it. I'll stay motivated. And then we become, and when I say we become, these are general generalizations. I'm not saying everyone does this, but it's very common. You know, having like seen clients in my therapy practice that, you know, it's just, there were a lot of like consistent things that showed up. I am not enough. I am not enough. Enough. Compared to what? Compared to who? Right? Well, I'm not smart enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not, you know, skinny enough. I'm not, you know, dynamic enough. There's all of these things. There's so many. Everyone's fill in the blank. But what does it mean? Yeah, that's a great question. So let's say, there's a girl in your class who gets B's, right? And you get B's. And are you okay with the B? Or assuming that's, you did your best, you got a B? Or are you saying, well, I'm not smart enough because this girl has an A, right? the current state of our, I would say, society is very much, I'm not smart enough because I don't, right? I'm not skinny enough because I didn't reach this part of the way. I'm not pretty enough because I don't have that person's nose or eyes, whatever. There's many different ways. That's one way of looking at our world. Another way is I'm not compared to Hashem, because Hashem is the ultimate truth. So Hashem created each of you. Hashem created you with certain skills, certain talents. And having a healthy self-esteem means knowing your skills and your talents without any delusions about yourself that were, fed to you however they were fed to you. Magazine, from a billboard, from the news, from a movie, whatever it is. Self-esteem is knowing I have strengths, I have limitations, I am human, I am nothing compared to Hashem. But also Hashem created me with a purpose, for a reason. I'm here for a reason. My mission is to find out, why I'm here. And so long as we're running away from that, then we're running into the space of inauthenticity, which can lead to anxiety and mental health struggles. And virtually every mental health diagnosis, not all, but most of them have a very good relationship with low self-esteem. It's usually like, one and the same. Someone's coming in with a struggle. It's like you just dig, low self-esteem is right there at the bottom. So if we can kind of dig in and understand what self-esteem even means and why we're struggling and how we can overcome the struggle, then we're all moving to this place of godliness. And it's a very beautiful place to be. And if you think of the closest place you've been to that feeling of godliness, it can either be when you felt very connected to the person that you were talking to. It could be when you were able to help someone with the struggle that you had, and you felt this sense of pride that finally this challenge, you're understanding why you have it. You're understanding the reason that God gave it to you. So I'm going to share just a few random tips that I felt were extremely helpful for me and for some of the clients I've worked with, for some of the people that I've met, and also on my podcast, which the podcast was really the result of the whole journey of growth that I had to go on, which I'm still going on because we're always growing. Every day we're growing, and it's really grown beyond our expectations. And I think it's because we're willing to talk about things that affect us in a real way and not sweep things under the rug, because we understand. And I understand having, been a therapist for not so long, but long enough to know that these are universal. And if we can just understand ourselves, our inner world, and understand. So the training process, including training process here. So I spent my lifetime, being the helper, but officially, not even a little bit.
How would you balance the that of things together? But then it's hard. I feel like it's a hard balance to be like, okay, I have these talents that also be like, but I should also do this, I want to work harder or do something else or work on it Sahara,
I'm writing this down. They don't want to forget.
I feel like it's a very hard balance. I just feel like it's action, but then also but then I want to work, it's like,
okay. I'm writing it down because there's two answers to that question. Okay. So first thing is that there's process and then there's outcome. And what we're doing in order to get to the place we want to be, if we're enjoying that process, right, which is called process, if we're enjoying that, then whatever outcome looks like becomes less important. And then no matter what happens, we're always going to be in this state of presence of mind where it's always going to be as though we've arrived, like we're content. So we'll always be striving in a healthy way. So let's think of a practical example. Thinking of something. Think of a goal. The goal that you had in mind. I'm trying to think about. Huh? Okay, that's a great example. Okay, so let's say you have a target weight, right? You want to lose this amount of pounds. If the goal is to lose the weight, not only will you not, if the goal is solely to lose the weight, not only will you not enjoy the process, but you're less likely to achieve the outcome. If you can find something that helps you enjoy the process, not only are you more likely to lose the weight, but you're also more likely to continue in the habits that you want to continue in. So I'll give you an example that I do. I love listening to podcasts. And so I will reserve podcasts only for when I want. It's like I've imposed this rule on myself. That's if I'm going to share with you. Actually, I'll share it with you now. It's relevant, but it's called manufacturing motivation. So sometimes we're not inherently motivated. And exercise is a great example, right? I don't know that when maybe once you get the momentum, it becomes like a routine, then it gets exciting. But to start exercising out is not easy. So manufacturing motivation means I know I want to do this, but I have to set up my environment so that I am as likely to do this as I can possibly do. So I'll lay out my sneakers and my workout gear and all the things I need to work out. I'll download the podcast I want to listen to, like a really good one that I've been waiting to listen to. And so when I wake up in the morning and I have trouble, like I always have trouble figuring out what I'm gonna wear. I'm just like a little bit tired, but then it's already laid out there. I put on my sneakers and my workout clothing. I mean, it's on, so you might as well. And then you go outside. And then once you go outside, you take the first, and anyone who's started a workout knows that like if you can do the first 30 seconds, you can do the first, let's say 10 minutes. If you do 10 minutes, you do 20. If you 20, that's kind of how it's like when you find a way to enjoy the process, huh? One step at a time. Yeah, exactly. Small and steady, slow and steady. So that's one answer. Is that to really find a way to enjoy the process as much as you can. So that way you'll be in a state of, yeah, you'll always have a goal in mind, but it won't be like, I need to get to that goal. Otherwise, I'm going to be so upset because that's going to make you less. The other thing is, this is actually a Hasidic concept, and I don't remember the source, but I remember someone sharing it in our Torah, that this is great for workaholics. This is great news for workaholics, is that we have to believe that Hashem is running the world, right? There are people who exert every effort in their life, right? Go to work from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. and they have not achieved the goal they wanted to achieve, right? Maybe they're not making enough money to make it to the next level, right? They're not making as much money as they wanted to. Then you have people who are working a 4-hour work week and they met their goals. Why? According to our perspective, is that Hashem is the one who calls the shots. We're just making a feeling. Now, what workaholics are doing, essentially, is they're saying, Hashem, I got this. Don't worry. I don't need you. I can handle this myself. So I'm gonna continue to work. I'm gonna neglect things that are important. I'm gonna neglect things like connection, godliness, prayer, things that I know will enhance my life in a real way. Because I want to make the next dollar, or I want to get to this next level goal. And then Hashem sends us subtle reminders of this goal. So this Hasidic concept states that we have to do, it's our job to make it daily. Still do what we feel we need to do to accomplish what we want to accomplish. Do enough so that you can say that your success is because of you, it's because of your efforts, but not so much that you're in the workaholism zone and then you're no longer having Hashem. Do enough to say, I made the case. And I'm thinking of a practical example, but you want to make sure you put in the effort, but not to the point of depression. not to the point where you're exhausted all the time, because then what's the point? And this kind of be a little tricky because sometimes you have to, sometimes you have to work those hours, and the rules are different there, but that's just kind of necessary. So I'll share some tips in no particular order, and one of them is going to be more of an exercise that you can do. I think maybe it's better to do it, like later tonight, you go home or at any point. But first remember that when you're talking about comparison, there is no comparison. There's no other you in this world. You cannot say that there's another identical person who has my DNA, who has everything I have, who I can compare myself to. If there was someone like that, then I'd say, okay, go for it. Same DNA or same person, let's see if we can do better. We can compare and contrast. There's no one else like you. You are the only you on planet Earth, in Hashem's world. You cannot say, there's no precedent either. Like there's no nothing to base what you're doing now off of. Yeah, definitely your past, with creative energy. So every moment you're being a co-creator of your life with Hashem. And that's very powerful. That means that this moment will never happen again. Now this moment will never happen again. Right? Now this moment will never happen again. It's amazing. Every moment is very, very precious. So I'm gonna I wrote a lot of them down. Some of the tips are just in the form of things that will help you be more self-aware, and help you become more fulfilled in whatever way you want to. But one thing that I thought was very powerful for me is to treat yourself like someone you're responsible for helping. Because whenever you're questioning, what should I do? What's the best way to go through this challenge or this situation? Well, what would I tell my best friend to do? And it's likely that that's probably a more accurate description of what your life should look like. Because again, we often will compare our insides and outsides to somebody's outside. It's not a fair compare. Sure. Treat yourself like someone you are responsible for helping. Another concept is that our lives are a journey. We're on a journey, right? Life is a journey. And if you're going on a trip, you're packing in a suitcase. You want to pack what you're going to need for the trip, right? So if you're going to a tropical climate, you're probably going to want an umbrella or a raincoat. Now imagine going on a trip with no suitcase. You didn't pack for. It could be hard. So you want to be proactive, right? Know yourself. We each will know ourselves better than other people know us in most cases, right? We're if you're wanting to be more self-aware, what's your proverbial umbrella? When you wake up tomorrow morning, right? What are the things that like that you could say now, right? So much easier to plan for the future, and the future comes. And, suddenly we have something called present bias, where we just want to do what we want to do now, forget what we wanted to do yesterday, that we knew would be great for us, right? So plan ahead. So what does your proverbial umbrella look like? So I know if I want to eat healthy, I need to have healthy food within my line of vision, right? If I walk into the kitchen and there's steak, I'm going to take steak. And if I walk into the kitchen and there's a fruit plate, I'm going to take the fruit plate. I'm lazy. It's there, right? So how can you set up your, set your journey, let's say, proactive, where you can make sure in advance, because in the moment it's a lot harder to set yourself up for success. Now, we discussed the visualization, right? If you close your eyes, it's simple. Close your eyes, if you visualize, what your best self looks like, you're more likely to get to that place. And this is the exercise I think that will be helpful. I actually still do this now, and I always think about it because it's so hard to find. It's hard to find a role model, right? Who checks all the boxes for you, and it's very important to have a role model because you're growing into, a better version of yourself. It's good to have people that you can look to and say, I respect this person. I want to be more like them. So the exercise is as follows. You think I'm actually going to read it. So I was able to find the source online. I just today, I really wanted to have I'm just going to read it. Okay. So think of 7 to 9 people you admire or who inspire you. So these could be parents, teachers, historical, it could be fictional characters, anyone. If anyone has listened to the podcast, how okay. It could be a leader or a famous figure. So another way to identify them is to ask, ask yourself who has influenced you in your lifetime, right? Who you looked up to. Okay. So once you have a list of these people, like 5% people, you're going to write down what you admire about them. And then you want to find the common denominator, things that keep showing up. And usually those are the things that you aspire to. And that's another tool for building self-awareness, because when you know who you aspire to, what you aspire to become, it's easier to know how to get there, right? So who do I want to be like? Now, if I have my list of people, then I know if I'm packing for a journey, I'm packing for a trip, to go to that place, right, to be more like that person, then I might have more tools available, because I don't know what I should do, but I know what this person would do, so maybe I should be like that. My podcast partner, Rivka, she said she doesn't come here. Yeah, so, okay, yeah. So Rivka and I were in Dubai last week. Rivka Krinsky. She called me with this opportunity. There were 100 widows who were flown out there for a beautiful experience trip, and we went out to do a program for them. And so 96 of them were Israeli, did not speak English. Maybe a few that spoke a couple words of English. 2 women spoke English, maybe 2 to 4 women. And I asked the coordinator, "Why are you calling me? I don't speak Hebrew. Why did you get someone from Israel?" She said they wanted to do it right. And so we had to find a way, and ended up so interesting. We had to find a way to communicate in a different language. We couldn't communicate with English words because they didn't speak English and I didn't speak Hebrew. So what we did was we took this 7 role models project, this exercise, and we brought it to them. We did it. I spoke in English. I played piano and Rivka sang songs, and we chose 7 women. So Sarah, Rachel, Esther, Malka, different women from biblical sources, and we shared what we admired most about them. So we said their names. What ended up happening, which was incredible, was the women shared the same name as these heroines, biblical heroines, got up and they shared with the crowd, and I understood with the pieces how they connect to these women and how they want to be more like them. There's one woman, so one of the women that we chose was Rebbe Safana, Rebbe's mother. And so Rivka and I, we both shared what we admired about them. And Rebbe Safana was very resourceful, and she was optimistic. I didn't know, I actually know this at the time, but she was not able to go to her son's wedding, Lubavitch Rebbe's wedding. She was not able to be there. And she was devastated, thinking that she would be able to celebrate her son's time. This was for only at that time. When had been told before. What year was it? Yeah, it's the old one, right? But she didn't go to her son's wedding, and instead of being sad and mourning, she couldn't be there. She celebrated. She invited guests over to her house for a party. Mm-hmm. And so one of the women, so we asked if anybody else has the name Hannah, they can come up and share, what they most admired about. And one woman came up and she started to cry. And she said, "I was crying just, feeling her pain, not knowing what she was, understand the context, but she missed her son's wedding because of COVID." And she said, "Had I known this, I would have thrown a party. But I didn't throw a party. I just sat there and I was watching on the responded, I was upset, I was thinking about how much I was missing, instead of thinking about the beauty of being able to see it on Zoom. First of all, being able to at least witness, in fact, on this day, there was no way of seeing the wedding pictures after. So it ended up being very impactful and emotional and very special. And I think it's one way of just stepping into the person that we want to become. I think that really our potential is limitless. I say this from a place of, authenticity is not enough of a word. I just can't think of the right word, but it's certainly for me in my own life, knowing what what I did and what I was able to, get through, the challenges that I was able to overcome. I feel like if I can do it, I think anyone can do it. So I would love, for you, if you would like to do this, it could be amazing. Just not even out loud, but it would be more beautiful if you could share it. Something that you can commit to doing for yourself to honor the incredible person that you are, and to recognize that you have a unique potential that no one else has. No one else has it. And if you don't step into the potential, that's saying, Hashem, I've got this, right? Because you gotta recognize Hashem has given you your life and your soul and your talents, strengths, and limitations for a reason. And let's not say, Hashem, I've got this. Let's Hashem, help me understand why this existence here right now is significant. And we need Hashem to do that, and sometimes we need friends to do that, sometimes we need mentors to do that, but I know we certainly need an authenticity where we can be open about how we feel in a safe space with each other. And to say, I'm struggling with this. I'd love to bounce this off. I'm feeling with this. Is it just you? And then a good friend will tell you, it's just you're amazing, right? And that's really everything I have for tonight. But I would love to hear. Yeah. What's your name? Sorry, Nama. Okay.
Can I just like not getting down into the beginning, like trying to be your best self, like how to not focus just on the ending and doing it now? Because I think it's like the question too, though, my question is how you're gonna get that, like what's doing that moment fall short of your goal.
Yeah. So, okay, so two things. And I don't know if I wrote it down because one that I mentioned, I'll just kind of, maybe reiterate. One of them is the manufacturing motivation, finding a way to do that. If it's something that is hard for you, I feel like an example. Do you have a practical example of something? Like I don't want it to be esoteric to like let's think.
Yeah, not like this.
Yeah,
Like that's exactly.
I wish I would think about this. Trigger come.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't, yeah. That never happens.
And you want to be there or better. Like a good have a certain goal. You have like image, but you don't have to get stuck on that because it's like walks. It's frustrating. You're like,
So we want to change, but not if it means change. So, when it's said that way, it's kind of like, oh,
I work on my mind. I feel like that's an example.
right.
You know what I mean? Like,
yes,
I'd be like,
yes, exactly.
the amount of hours that actually worked out in my brain would be like really thick right now. Really thick.
Yeah.
It couldn't be Olympian.
It's just so interesting. It's like the fact that we know the things to do, we just have trouble doing. So there's there's two ways that the first we can work on, identifying what thoughts are sabotaging us. That doesn't always work, right? Challenging our thoughts is not always going to get us to get there. Then there's the reality of like the small action step, the little things that are too you can't get out of that, right? So I can't get out of putting my sneakers on when they're right by my bed. So whatever the equivalent of that is. Another thing that I've seen that actually I tried once, I'll share how it's funny. It's called the 5 second rule. 5 second rule is, well, usually the first thing you think of, oh, something falls on the floor and they get there, you pick it up in 5 seconds. And it's not dirty, you won't get sick. So there's another 5 second rule where kind of like when you go outside onto the pavement with your sneakers, right? 5 seconds, then you're good to run. So there's a period of 5 seconds. And tell me if I don't know if this answers the question, but I might need to hear the question again, just so that I can, make sure I understood it. But the 5 second rule is essentially saying there will always be a period, 5 seconds, where that's almost like the that moment of truth. Am I going to do it or am I going to not? The mind is always going to go to easy way out, easy way out. By the way, being resentful, angry, all of those things, all of those emotions are easy way out, right? It's easier to be angry at someone rather than acknowledge what role we have in what went down. So in the 5 seconds of following that desire, do something. There is, once we recognize that it's just 5 seconds, it feels more doable to do the thing. So I'll share it's a silly example, but my husband has been trying to get me to try wake surfing for probably 3 years. And all my kids do it, and they've gotten great at it, and I'm terrified of cold water. Cold water is very scary for me. I think maybe when I was a kid, that was a lake, I don't know, something like that. But, and I think my mother's is Russian, and so they used to swim freezing cool sea. And I mean, women back then used to, when they went to the mikvah, my grandmother went to the mikvah, cold water. So anyway, I just couldn't do it. And then I heard about the 5 second rule, and I just jumped into the lake, and I couldn't believe it. It was the most uncomfortable 5 seconds that I experienced in a long time. And then after that, I saw this great research about cold showers, and that's like to me so far-fetched. I'm never taking a cold shower. It's impossible. And then I started to see more and more research about the benefits of cold showers in the morning, where it can actually boost your motivation, like physically, or it can actually get the dopamine levels in your brain going. Dopamine is the neurochemical that gets you feeling motivated. It has other roles, but that's one of the main. So the 5 second rule is, I hate this for 5 seconds, but I could do 5 seconds. 5 seconds is so little. It's just nothing. But then after 5 seconds, you realize then you can maybe do a second more, and then those little things perpetuate that change. But I have a feeling I'm not fully answering. So ask the question again.
Like how can you work on changing mindset? Fall short of changing mindset. How do you not fall back like the feedback loop of lowering your self-esteem if you didn't hit the goal of changing mindset?
Okay. So the feedback loop is very dangerous because it's basically what's happening is negative thought is coming into your mind, and then or a thought that's not helpful, and then you're believing it. And then, like I said earlier, where focus goes, energy grows, right? That thought has entered into your mind and taken some space, right? Rent free in your mind. And then it starts to grow bigger and bigger and bigger. And then that becomes a negative cycle that can kind of suck you in. The only way that I think is effective is literally like short circuit. I think that's the word. It's just halt.
What?
Like short circuit? Is that?
No, yeah, but then you said a different word.
Halt. HALT is an acronym for. Huh? I think so. No, no, it's different one. I was like, we've read that one. Actually, no. Yes. Sorry, yes. Yeah, yes. Yes. Yeah, am I hungry? Am I angry? Am I
Lonely.
lonely?
Or tired.
Am I tired?
I'm always.
So let's tackle one at a time. So, yeah. So first you focus on the things that you can do. Yeah, I mean, most of you know that on some mornings you'll wake up and you feel good. Some mornings you don't feel as good, and then sometimes you're angry. Sometimes you realize, oh wait, I didn't eat. That's why I'm feeling a little bit off today. You want to like kind of check those easy boxes first, and then after that, look, if you check all the boxes. Okay, I slept okay last night. I ate a nice, a healthy enough breakfast. I got some vitamin D. I went outside. I walked a little bit. I had my proverbial umbrella for my journey, and still I feel out of sorts. Still I'm not motivated. Then outside help might be necessary, or not even then. I feel like having a therapist or a coach or a mentor, someone you can go to, is beneficial for anyone. There's no harm in doing it. As far as I'm concerned, I can't think of anything that that can be disadvantages about getting having a therapist. So I would say that try all the little things. If the little things don't work, then seek help. I don't know. Hope that answers the question.
Lonely, tired.
Lonely, tired.
I'm curious if you don't mind. I want to hear a little bit more because I get very inspired, and that's my way of being motivated. How were you able to? I mean, you said a little bit, pieces, and I'm trying to know, like, was it like a small, a very step by step? Did it work like that, or all of a sudden it just, was a flow one day and it all made sense, it all came together? Just curious, because I am in the process, and I don't know, I guess I'm looking to, what works for me or whatever.
Okay, so I'll give you an example from today. I set my girls off and a little longer than I thought. I knew I was having a good day. I wanted to prepare. And so I went back to the place where I was staying. And I started to prepare, but it wasn't enough. It simply wasn't. But I knew that I had, I think, many workshops before, classes before, and I know that the golden nuggets, like the important things that have helped me in my own life. And so I think that enabled me to be here today. And I know that, look, Hashem, I'm here to share what I know, share what I have, and Hashem is open to I made the case. Maybe next time if we have more time. But the point is that the whole theme, I would say for me, has been start before you're ready. Because there will never be a point in my life where I feel like, okay, so now it's smooth sailing. I don't think I think I'm right then.
Yeah, ready to know too.
Yeah.
Start before you're ready.
Start before you're ready. And it's important to understand. I just want to clarify what that means. Because start before you're ready doesn't mean go on a marathon before training for it, right? You're not going to run 10 miles before you run 1 mile. The point is, like what I mentioned earlier, that Hasidic concept is like, know that you did enough that you can say, okay, if this goes well, then I know it's because of the effort that I put in. But not to feel that if you're not spending 25 hours doing something. So whether it's starting venturing into something you've never done before, or maybe taking a chance on something that gives you some anxiety, right? Maybe going so different from the person, like going into a room full of new people can be very anxiety provoking. Knowing, look, I'm showing up here. I'm not ready to be here, but I know that I'm not better off staying home, ruminating about how maybe I should have done, maybe I shouldn't have done. Another thing is that I find there's a lot of truth in the idea that it's better to try than to not try. It's better to say I tried and I failed than to say I failed to try. So it's better to do the thing, right, with the right intentions, with the right values. That's not a whole other topic, it's values, right? When you have strong values, you have something to, the foundational principle that you work on, you know, so we could stay focused. But
Did the self-esteem come from for you from doing small steps, and then you're like, wow, okay, it's repeated enough, and then it felt like that, or did it work a different way?
so it's such a good question. The self-esteem. So as a teenager, I struggled with low self-esteem. I didn't understand where it came from, but it was just something that I dealt with. The things that I was doing in order to increase my self-esteem were the wrong things. And they were the wrong things because I was asking the wrong questions. For example, anyone who's been a people pleaser, right? And I find a lot of people have this tendency, right? So what question are they asking, right? The question they're asking is, how can I get people to like me, right? That's the question. So if you're answering that question, what are you doing? You're going out of your way to do favors for people, maybe at your own expense. Maybe you're, always trying to say the thing that the person wants to hear as opposed to what you actually feel. You're trying to be the person that another person wants you to be as opposed to the person that you really know that you are. So when you're stuck in this place of answering the wrong questions, then that actually makes your self-esteem worse, right? That actually can perpetuate this negative cycle. So what was happening is I was saying, okay, how am I going to have better self-esteem? Is let me get my friends to like me better. So if my friends like me better, then I'll have better self-esteem. So if someone said they liked my shirt, I actually be like, oh my God, totally take it. Or, I love your shirt. I've given away things that I still want. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? And so it was interesting, and my friends would all say, oh my gosh, you're like the most generous person I know, which was so sweet to hear that. But if it wasn't coming from me, if it was coming from an external force, it was not feeding my neshama, right? You can give, but not from a place of I'm giving because I want the person to like me. You can give from this place of I have the value of giving because it's who I am, it's part of my identity. But it's not created from a place of what it's called like a scarcity mindset, which is a popular term about how, like giving from a place of lack. So over time, right, I started to learn about the importance of questions. We have to spend significantly more time working on our questions than the answers. We're not doing that, right? We're working so hard answering the questions, the wrong questions. Imagine taking a test and you read the question, but you didn't understand the question. And you articulate the most beautiful answer, but it's the wrong answer. You're not going to get any points for it, right? If you understand the question, answer is a lot easier. So questions, really any question that you ask, it's like a problem defined as half solved. So it's an Einstein quote. So like if you can understand the problem, you've already solved it. But many of us don't even understand the problem. So if someone will go into a therapist's office and say, I can't deal with my mom. She drives me nuts. How can I get my mom to stop driving me crazy? That's my question. If that's what I'm working on, getting my mom to stop driving me crazy, I'm in for a long haul, right? I could say this because my mom is the sweetest, nicest person. There's no actually nice thing. She'll know this is not about it. But I think a lot of people struggle with their relationship with mom. That's my truth. So what's the question I need to ask? This is not the right question. It's not getting to where I want to be. I could spend years trying to change my mom or my sister or my brother or my husband or my child, but that's not the question. So what's the question? So back to my experience with self-esteem. The question was, how do I increase my self-esteem? Well, let me do it by becoming more popular. Let me do it by becoming smarter. I wasn't the smartest person, and I didn't feel like the smartest person, and I wasn't the smartest in my class. So it was always like, let me work on, proving that I'm smart, proving myself to others. And those things were good. And those things did help build a certain confidence. But until I was able to acknowledge that all of those things are good in and of themselves, but only if they're coming from a place where I recognize that I am a that's really essentially what it is. Until you realize that you are God, right? Then you're in a physical realm, and it becomes like almost like a hamster wheel. You see, there's so many people who have reached tremendous success, and they're still chasing something that's not finding because they just don't have that core of just I am Hashem. Once you have that realm, you're in that realm, then
But we all know that. We all know that. But how do we, you know, really, we all know that, right? We're all here to know that. But how do we really, how does it become real for us? So how did it become real for you?
so self-awareness and realizing that the questions I was asking were not yielding the answers that I needed. Feedback from people around me that I trusted, loved, about, which I still seek out all the time. You know, does this make sense? You know, someone to talk to.
That was a big part of it. Having like a friend.
Yeah,
That's
you know,
a big part.
interestingly enough, I do not have one. I have been looking. It's something, you know, it's like finding a soulmate. You know, some people find it at 19, some people find it at 40, 50, 60. Everyone finds it in their own time. But we're always looking. We're always striving to find the person. Our best bet is by truly knowing what we need, right? What do I need? If I know what I need, then I know what to look out for. So I don't have the one mentor, and that's why the 7 Mentors Project is so helpful, because now I have all these amazing women who also struggle with self-confidence, women who, you know, often dealt with, you know, worry and anxiety, fear. That Sarah was kidnapped. You know, she was childless most of her life, and she had very difficult years. And it actually says all for yours are good. You know, why? Not because you're actually physically good from your perspective, but because she recognized that it's all Hashem's mission for her. So she saw it as, so it's a combination of things, self-awareness. It's really tapping into, you know, our field like having my mom mission. And it's a daily practice. It's not something that one day wake up and say, oh, I have, it's not an aha, maybe it's an aha moment when you realize.
And I was curious if there was like an aha and all like flow, it ultimately flow.
Right. Yeah. But there's never flow. I think there were several aha moments. For me, I think it was pairing up with Ruthka Krinsky, my podcast partner, who, you know, having that person to talk to and vice versa, I think was very, very empowering. It's very empowering. I think I don't know that I would do that myself. Sometimes you could do it yourself. Sometimes maybe you might effort or help. If we know what we can accomplish on our own and what we might be able to help with self-help. Right. Sometimes there's self-help. Sometimes we really need that help. Right. Like, yeah.
Who was she speaking to?
Lord John. Actually, at one point, money travel like.
He said that.
Yes, in the podcast. Yeah. And he said that ground, and he at that point he was trying to self-help, but the self-help wasn't
Actually physically drowning in water.
Yes.
Oh,
So he was like trying to.
I thought it was like verbally.
No. Actually, if you said like an example of my brother.
When you
feeling like so. Yes, they have like a podcast.
And one thing that I found amongst all of our, we interpret people's work like very well
well known, and also people who are not. And because we feel like everyone has, that's exactly why we do it. You know, Lord Jonathan Sachs, you with this aunt, who is an amazing woman, because everyone has something to share. She's a widow who decided later in life, after she lost her husband, that she wanted to go back to law school. And at 52, she graduated law school. You know, so that was that podcast was about how it's never, you just trust the timing of your life, and it's never too late. But one thing that we found, not just in the internet, but really in history, is that self-doubt and confidence, all of these challenges are universal. So, and somehow everybody feels so alone. Like my daughter went to campus where she said, you know, she's like, oh, there was a lot of what ifs. It's her first time going to summer school camp, a lot of what ifs. And I said, I can guarantee you those what ifs are all over the place. You just don't hear them. You know, everyone's putting their best face forward. Luckily, she has, you know, I drilled into her the importance of just being open and vulnerable and safe space. So she set her up for, yeah, things are changing now. We're heading in a very positive direction. I don't know if you're familiar with Brene Brown. She's really like steered the ship, vulnerability ship, where it became safe to share what you're struggling with, what you're dealing with, in an authentic way, and really it's special.
Yes. You were mentioning before about questions that were focused on answers, not get a little more specific about that. Very curious.
Yeah.
What that would look like.
What is the question? What is meaning? I think exactly what you're saying was along the lines of let's say the person who's feeling self-conscious, their question is what does everyone else think about? And then they're so focused on answering that they miss the actual question, which should be, and this is where I pass the mic back to you. Yeah. So yeah, it's easier to get specific with an example. Let's say I have social anxiety and I walk into a lot of people there and I feel anxious and overwhelmed. And so I go see my therapist and say, you know, how can I become more social, or like I need help being able to engage in a conversation with somebody in a public setting, right? And become more of an extrovert. Let's say that's my question. I get social anxiety. I want to be more of an extrovert, so I can like manage people better. So if I'm answering that question, then how can I do that? Okay, well, learn how to have a conversation, have talking points, right? So let's say I have talking points. I've prepared myself to go into the social situation, and it's likely, and this is not certain, this is not certainty, but there's a likelihood that it won't resolve the social anxiety. You're not having social anxiety because you know how to carry a conversation. You're having social anxiety because it's something deeper, or deeper rooted. Yeah. So you're basically just digging deeper. Yeah. No, please. Finding the source. Yeah. The source. Just exactly. Digging deeper. There's something called therapy, where trained therapists are. We're trained to know that there's always a presenting problem, and then there's all the stuff underneath it. Usually, what they're coming to therapy with is very different from what the core issue is. So, what you're coming to therapy with is the initial question you have: how can I get my husband to love me? How can I, be more attracted to the people maybe will accept? How can I, how can I get my dream job so that I can make it on the social map? These are surface questions. They're on the surface, and those are questions that we ask to answer our entire lives that we resolve. So as we're digging deeper, it's saying, how can I come to a place where I recognize that whether or not somebody likes me has no bearing on my value as a human? Let's just say it's a question that gets you closer to the question you need to ask. I'll tell you what the right question is. What I believe the right question is how can I better connect to myself, to others, and to my God-given. I think that's a question that really hits at the core. And then take that question with you and say, so if I'm in a room, there's a lot of people there. If I'm asking this question, how can I connect to myself, to others, and to my God-given potential? And you're walking into a room, and again, some anxieties need to go through the process of therapy and our methods of working through, symptoms. But I'm saying this is just sort of like an initial, starting point. You walk in there and say, Hashem, you put me here. So I'm not going to try to control, right? I'm not, pushing you out of the picture. You are here with me. So just guide me in this process. And when you're in that mindset, it could be something that feels very lofty and esoteric and like not that's easy to achieve, and that it isn't, because nothing, very worthy for ourselves. Oh, not nothing, but those things aren't very easy. If they're ultimately going to be like worthwhile, help us grow tremendously, right? They can require a little bit of stepping out of our comfort zone. If we know that Hashem is with us, then we're better equipped to walk through our day with contentment, sense of peace. Hashem puts. I didn't make myself. I didn't put myself here. Hashem. I didn't choose to be born. Hashem chose to be in this world. So let me figure out why I'm here. Why does Hashem want me? And there's so many different ways of finding out. And I think, Rabbi Shay's Taub, who I'm a very big fan of, is a rabbi. He has tons of videos available online, and I'm sure that there's there's great links that I can share with you that you can share with everybody. I mean, those, I just scratched the surface of different concepts and ideas that resonated with me. But he really is at the core. He helps you discover, why Jacobson and people out there now is so accessible to us. Media and these classes, like these are life-changing concepts, so accessible. Listen to them, listen to those. I think that they'll better answer whatever questions you have.
Sure. So like a lot of times I think we have like limits. So, like
Talk a little louder.
a lot of times you're like that like you have limits, like but like sometimes or what's not like how do you know like when to like allow like where do I stop and like
That's a really great question. So self-esteem really is knowing your strengths and limitations and being realistic about the role that they play in your life. So what I think is when you don't know, like, should I do this, should I not, am I cut out for this, am I not? I think feedback can be very helpful, right? Is bouncing it off of someone, like saying, hey, hey, sister or a friend or a husband or brother, I'm thinking about doing this. I just wanted to get you know me very well. Do you feel like this is unrealistic to me, or is it worth trying? Because other people's feedback is usually better than your own, because we have all of these, stories and self-talk that makes our much harder. Yeah, I mean, I bounce off my husband. He's extremely, like he's very clear on what. He's assertive. I think assertive is the right word. So he could say, yeah, this sounds great. I know that if he says, yeah, go for it, I think you should. And I know that like I have a much clearer picture in my mind. Sometimes it's hard when it's just me. Because I like to say yes. I'm still a yes person, and I still have people pleasing tendencies. It's not something that disappears. I've come a long way. Like, made tremendous, like changes and thank God. But still, like I'm always inclined to say yes. It's always a yes before a no. So if I'm saying yes to everything, then I'm saying yes to nothing really, because then I don't have the energy I need to, show up. So, and I've learned over time. So I took this opportunity. What do you think? Should I do this? Is this too much? You know, and I'll say, oh, don't. That's the day that you need to camp with the kids. Maybe go to New York and do it on that. You know, because the Zoom class just might take. Anyway, so I think it's a case by case basis. Depends what it is, but I think it's hard when you don't know your strengths enough to try to do certain things, right? So let's say there's something you want to do, but you don't feel like you can do it. You don't feel ready, or you don't feel, capable. And so you don't really know until you try. And sometimes you have to just try and take that risk, right? Let's assume that you spoke to someone and you're still not sure. Sometimes it's worth maybe taking that initial plunge, or the 5 seconds, like jumping in cold water, and then seeing what comes of it. Yeah.
You wouldn't take advice from.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think it's like that cycle of like ask, like ask.
Yeah.
Cross.
Yeah, sure. Trust is a big factor, right? It has to be someone that you know that you look for advice. Yeah. Then maybe to use a little bit. Like I'm closing my eyes and I'm picturing, my best version of me showing up somewhere. What would that person do in this situation? I think a role model exercise for me has probably been the most useful. What would this person have done? Even though we're so going to be, farther apart, like, worlds apart, but still, you can still gather wisdom. So it actually started with we saw. If it's not a heck yes, that was the first thing that I saw. Okay, it's not a heck yes, no. Let me start from. But really, what it was that if you knew that your yeses, true yeses, wouldn't you be more willing to say no to some things, as opposed to your true yeses, your yeses were not true yeses. So if you're saying yes to everyone, you're essentially saying yes to no one, right? Because are you fully showing up for all the yeses? So if I know that saying no to someone is actually saying yes to myself, if that makes sense, or I know that when I say yes, I'm saying capital Y S yes, which means sometimes I have to say no, yes, real yeses, then that makes it more digestible. Even though it's still hard to say no, being truthful, like it's definitely hard, which is why sometimes I say, let me think about it, let me get back to you, just kind of give me some time to process. That's been helpful also. But I think knowing that I want to be able to show up fully, and I can't do that if I'm being everywhere at once. That makes it easier. Hope that answers a little bit. There's definitely no magic one thing. It sounds bad. You realize yes, fruit, and then you're like you have to. How do you respect? That's where values.
And also that, like, the fact that not feel like a jerk about it.
Yeah.
Like a total piece of crap. Can you say that
Well,
here?
are you saying once you say yes, how do you say no? Now you already said yes.
How do you feel with your mindset of seeing yourself go down? Well,
Yeah. So, I'm going down that mistake. Right. First of all, you have to know that change is happening. So have that awareness. At the same time, know that you don't like yourself when you say yes. I don't like who I am. If I say yes, it's over that. Because then what's the point? I'm resentful, then it's not resentful, then I just said, I really said no to them.
Yes.
Huh?
You're not really saying yes. You're not just like before. You're not just with them.
Right.
So it's not helpful.
Exactly. So this thing, nobody really benefits. No one benefits. Also, especially if there's an underlying resentment. Let's say you say yes, and then you're just like, oh, here I go again. I said yes, now I have to do this, I have to do this. And I should, it's like, there's a term called shoulding, right? I should do this,
Shitting all over yourself.
I feel like you should be giving the class.
I know that. No, I'm like, I'm
Good.
gonna
Yes, you've never heard that?
No, I know you guys have never heard that before.
Like, and I like it.
Yeah.
I have heard it.
Right. Yourself up. So you know that you don't like the way you are with your policies. So that's where values are very important. And being proactive is kind of like similar to manufacturing motivation, but different because it's not specifically motivation. What you're doing is you're saying now, right? Let's say I'm asking, how many, what are you saying yes to? Let's say specifically, let's say, even if it's making dinners who had, who works. I keep my own order from the restaurant. That's a great example of knowing that, look, I want to be able to send this person cigarettes. I know that every time I say yes, I feel like it's if I say no on a chat, right? Everyone's like, who can make food, who can make dinner, and I'm MIA and not answering. I don't want to feel like that person, right? So I say yes, but then I'm resentful. And then that cycle perpetuates. But what if I say next time something happens, next time, so this time it's two. When you're in it, it's very hard to get out. Right? Sometimes it's pull you out. But if you're planning now for the future, right? It's like the proverbial putting your shoulders out. So next time and put reminders, literally just write a piece of paper. For 2 weeks, I will not be sending dinners to anybody. If I do, it'll be takeout. It's kind of like rules. You want to be, you don't want to, and sometimes look, like someone posts to a number, sometimes you'll do things that you don't want. And I don't want to say, it's important to know that saying yes to yourself doesn't mean being selfish. They're totally different. There's a lot of overlap. Where some might appear like they're the other, but it's not. What you're saying is, I want to use my energy in the best way possible so I can fulfill my mission. So, I am a daughter, I'm a mother, I'm a sister, I'm a friend. I want to show up as a friend. What can I realistically expect of myself where I will not feel resentment? If you're doing the same thing over and over again and constantly feeling the resentment because of it, then again, something needs to change. Right? We all want to change, but not if we change. Changing is so uncomfortable. I love that. Huh? We all want change, but not if it needs change.
How is that? So you were mentioning the challenge before the inner growth.
Yeah.
So being a mother, a wife, working, they all together. Do you have any tips on habits? We're saying a lot about exercising and what have you learned lately that really that some energy to be able to do everything for others?
Yeah. So like two answers. One is forget about time management. I think time management has become like, a trending word that I think needs to be banned from all productivity conversations. Maximizing your day in the way that when you get into bed at night, you feel content. This day was good. It's not about time. It's about energy management. And they're two very different things. Is that you could spend, 1 hour on your work and get more done than you would spending 8 hours on it, right? So you have to know, what part of my day is best suited for this thing, right? For this specific task or, conversation or whatever it is you want to accomplish. First, you have to know what you want to, what are your goals? What are your life goals? What are your daily goals? And then work from there. So I know I actually don't give night classes at all. That's why I mean, I 6:30 is even like pushing it. But because I know that and by the way, and even when I go to a night class, I know I'm only absorbing maybe 5 or 10% of the information there. I just this is how I am. So I know that if I need to do anything that requires mental energy, it's only happening to be 10 or maybe earlier from up road. And then after 3 o'clock, and look, this is me, and everyone has different responsibilities. Everyone has different jobs. We're all multi-role women in a way, because everybody is a child of someone at some point. Some of us have siblings. Some of us have, elderly parents that we need to take care of. So it's all about managing your energy, not your time. Forget time. And also another tip I actually just recently discovered that I did not know about was forget to-do lists also. To-do lists, if you have had a to-do list in the past, you'll know that it never is empty, right?
Yeah, it's just a piece of paper to remind me how much I failed today, like over and over and over again. And I'm like, ugh.
Right. Yeah,
I have a lot of them.
They just remind you of what you didn't do, not what you did. So an alternative to that is to have a time log. Now here's where it's not time management, it's a time log to manage your energy. So you're taking your energy and you're putting it in a time slot. So I'm saying that, let's say from 8 to 10 is when I do the research or, articles or podcasts or whatever. And then after that, there's breaks, little micro breaks, 5-minute breaks where I get up and literally run around the house, jumping jacks, or if I'm at the office, just like, quietly jumping jacks. But just be aware, like, I have ADD, so I know my focus capacity is very limited, but most people have ADD like between 20 and 30 minutes attention span. If you watch any TED Talk, the top TED Talks are never more than 20 minutes, maybe 25, because they know the attention span is limited. So just know your attention span is only allowing you to focus for 20 minutes, right? Get up and do something. Manage your energy. And yeah, that's all that I can think of now, but I'm sure some more things will come up later. Yeah. I didn't feel good. Thanks to the other than maybe less and basically that help with it's not just daytime cycle. Based on our cycle, certain times we have more energy creatively, and certain times we have more energy to like huddle down and like take care of business and how tracking our energy throughout the month also help us like, okay, these are the times that I need to be out and about going. These are the times that I need to be down and in the house taking care of the Actually that's this book. It's not a book, it's just a journal. It's a journal. It's a self-paced journal. So the pages are empty. You can take a piece of paper and do this yourself. It's basically a way to start each day with a goal and intention, an affirmation, and then just to kind of keep a log so that you keep track of what your days look like and how you want them to be different. You have to learn from your past. Your past is your greatest teacher. And then that's really what that's all about. It's the monthly. It's a lot you can accomplish.
What if you have small?
What's that?
What if you have small people?
Limit the energy they have in your orbit. I know sometimes you can't distance yourself from too much. Like, with that, we're about to take a picture with our speakers. Just hold 1 second. We answer it after.
Yeah. Okay.
No, they're
Yay.
that small.
So that is
Not energetic, they're very big energetic.
so all these rules do not apply to moms. It's